Okay, Insomniac Games did 2 interviews, one with Famitsu and the other with GamesRadar. I will read, summarize, and cut up both. Will this start in the same way as the main story? It will start a little bit earlier in the story, but this time I omit the scenes because I wanted to show the action immediately. This is Google translated from Famitsu, by the way, so the wording and grammar is going to be a bit odd. Isn't it difficult for developers to convey feeling of hectic feedback in words? You're right. The best way to tell is to have everyone play, and we can't wait for that moment. The one thing I can say is that each weapon has a different feel and can be clearly recognized. Speaking of lighting, due to ray tracing, Clank seemed to be more sparkling than in the previous work in the image. Ray tracing, a technology called tracing array that realizes realistic lighting, shadows, and effects that are based on realistic physical laws. That's right, since the evolution of technology is also reflected in this work, one of them is ray tracing to objects. As you pointed out, it is also used for reflection of Clank. That's great. Also, I am interested in the female Lombax tribe that appears in the end of the video. Is it a playable character? Mike, I think everyone is interested, and I would like to tell you as soon as possible, but we will release detail of the new Lombax in the future. And finally, the biggest news out of that whole thing is the confirmation of optional 60 frames per second, which will make a number of fans very happy. To sum that up, the game starts earlier from the story than what we saw, at least early enough to explain the tether device on Ratchet's arm. Not all, but most weapons will have their own feel and feedback, and I learned what the heck ray tracing is, and of course 60 frames per second. Now for GamesRadar, who I wish were like Famitsu, where the answers and questions were clearly displayed, but what can you do? Well, basically the question they have is asking the importance of the Dimensionator in terms of story and gameplay. Part of the reason we wanted to add dimensionality as a theme is it's wide open. This is one of the few franchises that can get away with doing anything. We can basically do whatever we want, and being able to transport players nearly instantaneously, which is a huge new feature of the PlayStation 5 that was something that we were aiming to do and capitalize on. I will say, even hearing about how fast it was, I was blown away when we saw how fast it actually was. We were trying to tell a story that revolved around, strengthening these two heroes, who are basically diametrically opposed. They don't see eye to eye on anything, but they're better together, said Smith, and we really wanted to make sure we had a message about that these two, tantamonious times, and people need to have more empathy and see past each other's differences to make sure that we're made stronger together, right? It's the overarching message of the franchise. But on to the real bread and butter. What about that female Lombax? Interestingly, from talking about the story, Smith seemingly suggests that the female, still unnamed, Lombax may be Ratchet from another dimension, thus creating a kind of Ratchet and Clank multiverse. You could read into the fact that at the end of the gameplay trailer, the female Lombax doesn't question for a moment who Clank is, but rather questions why he's calling her Ratchet. Of course, go deep into the lore, and canonically, female Lombax don't have tails, whereas our new playable heroine does. I will say that the dimension that Ratchet is from and that we are used to, that very well could be the rule of Lombax's physiology. He laughs and says the team isn't ready to start talking about the intricacies of her character and how she'll play just yet. And more comments about how the game feels with the console. It feels like the PS5 controller was designed with Ratchet & Clank weapons in mind. Okay, it's been a while since I played the older Ratchet & Clank games due to no collections being on the PS4, so I don't know about the franchise thing being about empathy. To me, it's about a comedic sci-fi adventure series with some nods to anti-capitalistic messaging and sometimes a deeper story. But now, on the female Lombax thing, yes, strong hints to what I talked about in another video on this being a female Ratchet from another dimension, but one that's sort of like, what if Ratchet never met Clank? How the game feels remains to be seen. Well, those are the important bits from this interview. We'll link them both below. Please remember to like and subscribe and tell me what you think.